Well, good evening. The governor clearly has a very impressive legacy as he finishes up his last State of the State today, and we are very proud to have been part of making that happen under the leadership of Speaker Hortman, who we were really grateful that the governor gave good recognition to. But it's an incredible legacy of accomplishment in education and paid family medical leave, of climate and labor, and we have a real opportunity here over the next few weeks to build on that legacy and cement it. And we are really ready to do that. And we think that there's a lot of things that can get done this year, that need to get done this year. The governor articulated many of those tonight, from the important work to combat fraud to doing something on gun violence. And that part was particularly meaningful to me and particularly meaningful to our caucus because it is essential and Minnesotans are crying out for it. And we are glad that he continued that fight tonight, and we will continue that fight all the way through the end of session. So we thought it was a hopeful speech and one that really clarified what we have accomplished over these last 7 years working together. Turn over to Walz.
Well, I think you heard the Republicans call the speech divisive, but what I heard was hope and pride. There was a lot of pride in the work that we've done as a community in coming through a very tough years, and frankly, a very tough 8 years that the governor has had to navigate, and a lot of hope in what we can do together going forward this session. I, in particular, was grateful that the governor had Molly and Jesse Merkel in attendance tonight, and the principal of Annunciation, to not let us forget the tragedies that have happened in our community. It is not divisive for us to take action on gun violence. That is broadly supported by Minnesotans. That is not divisive for us to respond to Operation Metro Surge that we've seen in our communities. And it is not divisive for us to try to take action for the rest of the session on the high prices that are gouging Minnesota families. So there is still work for us to do together, and I think the governor laid out a hopeful vision for how we can get that done in the rest of the session.
I very much appreciated listening to Governor Walz talk about the things that we have accomplished for the people of Minnesota over the last 8 years. And he also reminded us that the things that we have done together are going to persist for a very, very long time, even though he will no longer be in office. That is, I think, the testament to the work that we are able to do together for the people of Minnesota, especially when we work to build the things for our future together with the people of Minnesota. He has a proud legacy. We have a bright future as a result of the work that we have done together. And I think he did lay out for us some markers for the future, what we need to do in the next 3 weeks, but where we need to focus on a new economy, especially when he's talking about AI and the work that is coming about in our economy, and where we need to go as we build a future for the people of Minnesota, both the dangers, the threats, and the opportunities for us. I think it was a great speech. I'm grateful for it, and we're happy to take your questions. Thank you.
The Republican leaders who were just in here said the governor essentially went about grandstanding about Democrat priorities that passed with no Republican votes, saying this is as far from one Minnesota as you can get. What would be your response to that?
I think that Minnesotans judge the outcome of the legislature rooted in their lives and not based on who voted for what. I think who voted for what is not a matter for the people of Minnesota. They judge the impact of what we've accomplished based on what they're experiencing in their lives. The data shows that Minnesota is a strong place to raise a family, perhaps the strongest. Our economy is going well. And I think Minnesotans appreciate that and want us to work harder to make life more affordable for them as a result of things that are coming from Washington, D.C., whether it is the tariffs, the prices, the increased prices on fertilizer and on fuel and on housing as a result of Metro Surge.
On the gun issue, not one Republican stood up or applauded when those issues were brought up. The Republicans say you couldn't pass these gun bills when you had one party control. Why should the onus be on them?
Well, you know, I have to remind you again that we did pass gun bills when we, in 23 and 24, and those gun bills are saving lives across Minnesota every day. The extreme rich protection orders or red flag laws have been proven to work. We also passed universal background checks and a ban on binary triggers, as the governor said, we need to reestablish this year. And, you know, for all of you who have been watching the Capitol for a long time, you know it is very difficult to pass gun bills. And for decades before 2023, people had tried and tried and tried and fail. I think it is kind of silly to criticize the work that we did in 2023, which they wanted no part of, as saying it didn't go far enough. I mean, it's an absurd premise. I'm proud of the work we did in 2023. Minnesotans are alive today because of it. We need to do even more.
And I would say that it is perhaps not the onus, but the responsibility that they're feeling. We know that there were 2 kids killed in a church last summer in Minneapolis. And there's been a lot of work done to bring forward a package in the Minnesota Senate that addresses many of the things that our Republican colleagues have said they want to achieve. I think they're weighing that carefully, and I hope that they choose with their responsibility and their vote to support it.
Some of the elements in the governor's supplemental budget that he had mentioned tonight, things like the changes to the child tax credit or the tax on social media companies, do those have broad enough support in each of your caucuses?
You know, I think the work around the child tax credit has been something, you know, that the governor's been interested in, our members are interested in. And I will say it was Senator Rust who was first to propose a tax on data and social media. It is something that we support.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the bigger applause lines tonight was when the governor mentioned how we had cut child poverty through the child tax credit that was passed in 2023. Maybe that was one of the things the Republicans found so divisive, was cutting back on child poverty. And certainly on the social media tax, we have strong support for that in the House DFL. I think that we need to do something to hold accountable and ask these companies that are making enormous profits off the people of Minnesota, because it's your data, it's my data, it's everyone else's data that they are collecting and monetizing. And you and I get nothing out of that deal. The state of Minnesota gets nothing out of the deal, but the price tag of dealing with the consequences of social media. We're the ones that have to pay for the increased mental health costs because our kids have more depression, more anxiety, more eating disorders, more self-harm, more suicidal ideation because of social media companies. They pay nothing towards that. We absolutely support holding those companies accountable and forcing them to contribute for the mess that they're causing among Minnesotans.
On the issue with Capitol security and lawmaker security, you have some different proposals floating in both chambers. Are you confident that you can get Republican support for additional security for all of you?
Yes. I think that there is a broad consensus that we need to do something to ensure that lawmakers are safe, but not just that. The bill is much bigger than that. The bill is about making the Capitol a safe place for everyone who comes here, not just members, staff, partisan, nonpartisan, all of you, the public, the school children. This place needs to be a safe place in order for it to be accessible to the public. And the bill contains all of that. It also, of course, deals with judicial security, which is another priority. You know, our judges have very difficult jobs, and they often, you know, don't make people happy with their rulings when they're upholding the law, and they deserve to be safe as well.
You saw a strong bipartisan vote on that bill in the Senate chamber. We put that bill together with Republican support. They understand why it's important. We understand why it's important, and I think we'll get it done.
How, if at all, would you say that the speech tonight has altered the trajectory of the legislative session?
I think it is always clarifying when the governor talks about what his priorities are, and as we head into these last few weeks, it's good to have a focus on things that are important. And whether it's the need to combat fraud or the need to do something about gun violence, the need to make life more affordable by way of trying to make it more affordable to raise kids here, those are all values or goals that we share. And I think it's good for the governor to place attention on them as we enter the last few days of session when so many big decisions are made.
Anybody else?
Are you feeling hopeful about the last 3 weeks?
I am. I think that there's a lot that we can get done, and I think that there's a lot of things that we all agree should get done. You know, I mentioned a few of them there. You know, another huge one is HCMC. You know, there's bipartisan agreement that we have to save that hospital. And so I think between HCMC and bonding and fraud, school safety, there's a lot of pieces still in play, and I think we can leave this session feeling good about the work that we did, as long as we make very good use of these last few weeks.
What's the roadmap for negotiations? It's a non-budget year. I don't know how many of the committees match up in omnibus bills or single subject. What's the kind of the layout of negotiations going forward?
You know, we have begun to lay that out with the leaders and with the administration. Primarily, right now, we're reviewing the things that have passed and some of the governor's budget. We are working very hard, as you know, in the Senate to move our work along. We're going to take up Health and Human Services tomorrow. That will include HCMC, modernization and IT, HR 1 compliance. It is a significant proposal. It'll probably take some hours to debate it. We're going to continue to move our work, and at the same time, we are beginning to do the work of understanding what our proposals look like, setting joint targets, and then putting that to the members to finalize the bills and get our work done by the 18th of May. And we're going to get done. There's no special session. We are going to get done with their work.
Is the gun package expected to go on the Senate floor tomorrow or Thursday?
Tomorrow, we'll send it out of the Finance Committee, and I would expect to hear it early next week. Yeah.
Do you expect the conference committees will start meeting next week?
I would expect that you'll either start to see working groups or conference committees. Again, the security bill is the first one we've passed, and I would anticipate that that's going to come off the House floor soon, and we will get to work. Yep.
We're on the topic of conference committees. Is there any, I guess, sort of insight you guys could provide on how they're going to square single subject bills in the House with some of the omnibuses that are passing in the Senate and how that might look?
Well, I think that it is important to say we are abiding by the single subject law here in the state of Minnesota. And it's not uncommon to have omnibus bills, and we are moving in that direction because that is generally the way the legislature has gotten its work done. And I understand that the House is taking a different approach, and I think that we'll be able to work those things out through an administrative process. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's one of the things that we will talk about in negotiations the last few weeks, and I don't think that will be an obstacle. In the legislature, where there's a will, there's a way. And so if leaders and members want to do things in those areas, we will figure out a way to make the mechanics work.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.